Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Faircount's 16th stop on the iCount virtual bus tour. We are so glad to be coming to you live today from Quitman County, Georgia. Thank you to our special guests who have joined us. We are likely to be joined by... Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Faircount's 16th stop on the iCount virtual bus tour. We are so glad, and we will be joined by several other guests here very shortly. So I want to go ahead and get started. We launched this virtual bus tour back in June of this year. We were slated to have an in-person bus tour actually, which we started in March, but we were only able to make about 6 stops in 6 different counties before we had to sideline the bus to really, look at what was happening with the global pandemic to make sure that we were remaining safe and healthy through our communities. And so we came up with this very creative and innovative way to reach communities through outreach around the 2020 census, but also keep the bus tour theme. And so we're happy to do that. We're actually in the last couple of weeks of this bus tour. And so we were going to be making a stop in person in Quitman County, but we are here today to make that stop virtually. Our team has been, we've been, talking to residents on the phone. We've been talking to them through text messaging and a number of different ways to ensure that outreach has continued. I want to report that as of right now, it looks like our self-response rate for Quitman County is at 24.8. Compared to Georgia's self-response rate of 58.2. So we do have some work to do to ensure that we are up in our numbers across the county in Quitman. So the first thing I want to do for the conversation today is to introduce our special guests, and I'm actually going to have them do that. We have a distinguished panel of guests here from across Quitman County and various sectors. And I know Mr. Danny Blagman just joined us. I'm going to have him get himself straight. I was going to have him go first, but I'll turn to Ms. Sarah Lee Crumbs if you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves to those that are listening in.
Hi, I'm Sarah Lee Crumbs. I am coordinator for Quitman County Family Connect. Resource coordination is my primary job. I also focus on economic development and serve on several boards for that and for any issues for children.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ms. Crumbs, for joining us. Now I'll turn to Ms. Jones. Ms. Jones, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'd be glad to. I'm Joyce Jones, live in a small community here in Quitman County. Most of us are retirees in this community, as I have retired from the Department of Juvenile Justice. Serve on several committees here and just love our little paradise where we live.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ms. Jones. We're looking forward to the insight that you all will bring in the conversation. Mr. Blagman, are you able to introduce yourself?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Did he put himself on mute? Make sure you didn't put yourself on mute, Mr. Dan.
I don't think Mr. Lewis is on with us at this point, but is Mr. Lewis on? Okay, all right. Well, we're going to go right into the conversation, and hopefully, I know Mr. Blackman is on. He may just have to unmute himself. But Ms. Crumbs, I want to sort of get the conversation started with you. And again, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Family Connections offices and coordinators have been very instrumental in leading the way in which we operate with local complete count committees. And so thank you for the work that you continue to do there. And we know that that really is only one facet of the work that you all do. You do a lot to provide to families that are at risk, children that are at risk throughout the county. So I talked a little bit about the self-response rate of Quitman County and it being sort of one of the lowest right now in the state. I want to get some insight from you onto why do you think that is the case? What's being done to reach residents right now during this pandemic?
Well, I think there are several factors that are interfering with our response rate. One is definitely, it's a 10-year event. Not too many people are familiar with it or the history behind it or the importance of it. And that's one of the things I think we, as a whole, locally, regionally, and federally, we need to improve that somehow, maybe make it an annual mentioned somewhere, somehow. But also in our community, we have very limited internet access, broadband access, whatever you want to call it. And it's the county is just spread out, and not a lot of people have access to that internet or have computers in their homes. So that could be a factor in why we have such a low response rate, particularly online. Also, COVID-19 just kind of knocked everybody for a loop and shook things up. So the priorities of some people have just kind of switched. You know, I think a lot of people who would normally respond, they're just trying to survive this virus, and it's just not on the forefront of their minds to complete a survey or look at something in the mail. They're just busy, trying to make their families survive in this. So that, I think that has a big impact, not just for Quitman County, but I think across the country probably. Um, but the biggest factor I keep hearing and have heard all the years that I've been participating in the census has been, I don't want them in my business. I don't want the government to know what I'm doing. And for me, I guess thank God for education and parents who helped me understand what it was about. I don't know where that came from, but it's a generational thing. And I see Ms. Joy shaking her head.
Oh, I did.
Yeah, you've heard it too. So yeah, there's some type of, somehow or another, the story of big government getting in your business through the census has been created and has been perpetuated all this time. And I'm 51, so we're looking at what 5 decades that I knew about it.
Yeah, so no, I think you're spot on about that. And we've been doing these virtual events and town halls across the entire state. And that message is not specific to Quitman County, right? And so we want to make sure we let people know that the information that they're sharing, it is safe, it is secure. The Census Bureau is required under federal law to protect that information for up to 72 years. And so it can't be shared with ICE, it can't be shared with other law enforcement officials. And so we want folks to know that that information is safe when in which that they are providing. Yeah, there are tons of myths out there, and I'm going to talk to Ms. Joyce about that in a second. But we do want to make sure that we're dispelling those at every cost. I know we have. I think Mr. Lewis is in on the phone. Mr. Lewis, are you with us?
He tried to call me. That is his phone number, so I don't know what's going on.
All right, we're gonna go to our next question. Ms. Jones, I'm gonna go to you. So thank you so much for serving on the local complete count committee. Obviously you are retired and you've served your community quite a bit, and you could be doing a lot of other things in your spare time right now, but you chose to sort of serve through your local complete count committee. As Ms. Crumbs mentioned, we often hear stories from people about what they think the census is. Sometimes those things are true, sometimes they aren't. But what have you been hearing sort of in terms of chatter from residents about, the census and why they should or should not complete it?
I have to parrot what Sarah Lee has said. It's a lot of distrust of our government, and I think we've had ample reason to distrust the government in the last several years. And a lot of the elderly residents that I talk to in here are like, I'll just sit back and wait for the people to come to my house, because that's what they have known for years. We had someone that would come around the house and to the house and fill it out. I think a lot of it too, especially with my generation, is they are apprehensive about the technology as far as going online to do it. A lot of them don't have the capabilities for that. And a lot of them just don't have the desire to do it online. I've tried to encourage, and the ones especially that are in here, but if they're not pretty tech savvy, it's like beating your head up against a brick wall. We have a lot of rural areas in Quitman County that are hard to reach. The population is pretty much to themselves. They don't trust people outside their norm, and so it's just been it's been quite enlightening as far as me being on this committee, because I really didn't understand how important the census was. I had always participated, but had never really delved into it until I got involved. And I see now how important it is. And I've encouraged and talked and asked people to talk, and we're still, fighting a battle that we just can't get people to respond like we wish they would.
One thing you said, which I think, is certainly true about, the door knocking. In fact, when a lot of people think about the census, they often think about that person coming around to knock on their door. And so we're, because of COVID-19, obviously are not in that phase yet. But Georgia is going to start seeing door knockers in August, starting August 11th. Folks will start going around to doors, knocking if they have not responded to that. So that is something to keep in mind and let folks know in the Quitman County area that will start to occur. And the Census Bureau is taking protective measures to make sure that their employees, as well as the people that they'll be knocking on the door, will be safe in that process through, PPE and that type of thing. But the other thing I'll mention is that we don't often associate a call-in number that you can call in and complete your census as well. And that can be an option for some of our elderly population. So you can call in at 1-844-330-2020 to complete it over the phone. So if you're not comfortable with doing it online, you don't have the capability, because surely we know that there is that digital divide that exists in our communities. We can still do it over the phone, or that census taker will come and do it at your door. I want to see if Mr. Blagman is able to. I know he's on the screen, but see if you can get his. All right, you're unmuted, Mr. Blagman. How are you doing today?
All right, can anyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
At this point, I'm not sure whether I'm.
We can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining. Did you want to introduce yourself to our guest today?
Yes, I'm Danny Blackman. I'm a county commissioner. I serve as the vice chair of the commission at this point. I'm the chairman of the Quitman County Economic Development Board and chairman of the Southwest Georgia Development Authority. I also serve as a board member of juvenile justice for the state of Georgia. So I'm very involved in our area. I probably understand as much as could possibly be understood what our difficulties are here.
Sure. Well, I want to bring you in on the conversation here then for just a second, and particularly understand your commitment and your expertise with economic development, because that's often something we don't connect with the 2020 census, or census in any way. But when businesses are looking to relocate or drive, their business to certain areas, they're looking at census data to drive their decisions. And so, I'm sure Quitman County is working to always lure businesses in. So can you talk a little bit about why it is really important for us to have a fair and accurate count from an economic development standpoint?
Well, if you understand that we've been going through a downturn in population that is a continual process. So we've lost over 500 people since the last census. So we're down from roughly 2,500 people to just barely 2,000 people, according to the numbers. Now, basically, we've been in a case, as everybody is, that, with a declining population, we have not seen a reduction in the census dollars because we're locked in for 10 years. People don't understand completely the impact that has. So even though the people have been gone and have been leaving, we're not being penalized until now. So going forward is when all of this will be tallied up, and this loss will factor into the funds coming back to Quitman County, which are going to be extensive. So saying that this has a lot of impact is an understatement. Economics is what drives every community, whether it's a lack of it or the fact that you have it. So when you don't have any significant economy, you will have a continual decline. you will have an aging population. The reason you'll have an aging population is because there's no way for a young person legitimately to stay here. If they were born here, grew up here, most probably they're going to leave. And the reason they're leaving in a lot of cases is because they have no choice. Now, for me personally, a young person should be able to be free to leave if that's what they desire to do. But when you have no choice, that's where it makes it unacceptable to me for things to be as they are, because this life is about choices. And right now, young people have no choice. They can't stay here. Not if they want to live, not if they want to have families, not if they want to have careers, not if they want to be productive people in society by having jobs, incomes, bringing home a payroll check regularly. Have that opportunity here. I'm not going to say that's 100%, but it's not far from it. So the issue is for us, obviously we're not getting the job done. You can talk about everything you want to, but the bottom line is we're not getting our people counted. So part of this, the ladies previously have, discussed a lot of the reasons why it's the case. But I'm concerned that, from the census standpoint, basically you're talking about a nationwide program, and I'm just concerned that it's geared towards things that work in areas that are different than Quitman County is. So, I've been involved with folks that have been on the street, out traveling, going door to door and things of this nature. And the ones that I've talked to are very frustrated with the things the way Census want it done. So what that has generated is it has just basically added to our problems, and that's exactly why we're not getting a reasonable count. I can tell you at this point, I got the number of registered voters in our county, and when I tell you what that number is, you should basically realize exactly what I did. So we have almost 1,700 registered voters in Quitman County. So would anybody like to offer why they think that number is so high? Because I can just tell you that if our population is actually 2,000, 2,100 at the maximum, we're not going to have 1,700 people registered to vote. So obviously the numbers are skewed at some point. I just don't know where they're skewed. But I can tell you this, it doesn't matter if they're skewed or not. It doesn't matter if folks don't get counted or not. The problem is when you don't get counted, you're locked in with that number for 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's serious. So basically, if we found out, that we actually had 300 or 400 more people than we're getting credit for, that won't get corrected until 2030. So that's why people need to understand, everyone needs to understand how critical this is. This is our lifeblood. So going forward, we've got to quickly figure out what we've got to do to get an accurate count and get our numbers better than the rest of the state. My issue is we don't have that many folks to count. So why are we at the level that we're at?
Yeah.
So that's why we're here today. Is to try to figure this out, figure out what works for us, and get this done.
Yeah. No, well, thank you so much.
So, I may have said more than everybody wanted to hear.
No, but I think you made
I'm serious about this.
And brought up some concerns that exist. I like the part of particular about, this is done every 10 years. So if we miss out, now, a county like Quitman will miss those resources and infrastructure for 10 more years. And I think that is certainly a point that we should drive home to folks, particularly sometimes we look at communities and they're like, well, this county has this, why don't we have this? And it's like, well, maybe they had more people counted in the last census or this census. And so we need to really make it relational for people and make it direct for them when we're talking about it. I know Mr. Lewis is on. I want to give him an opportunity to see if he can unmute himself to join in on the conversation as well. Mr. Lewis, are you able to unmute? I don't think so.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay, Mr. Lewis, we can hear you. How are you doing today? Yeah, I think his connection there is a little bad, but
Can you hear? Can you still hear me?
Ms. Crumbs, I want to turn to you now, knowing that we know the census directs, over $1.5 trillion worth of resources on a pretty much an annual basis to cities, counties, towns across the entire nation. And that, directly impacts more than 300 federal programs. And so when looking at that from a family connection standpoint, can you talk a little bit about the impact that, some of those federal programs have on services that you're able to provide through your office?
Well, the fact that if we can't get our numbers up, we may lose dollars for the programs that we already have. It affects our Head Start program and intervention services like our New Horizons substance abuse and mental health program. Those are my resources. When families come in to me and say, I need help with this or that, 9 times out of 10, I can pick up the phone and call these agencies or the people that I know do the certain jobs at these agencies and get them the help they need, or at least get them on the right track to the help that they need. If we don't have the numbers and we start losing the dollars to support those programs, we are looking at maybe having to go as far as Americas. Right now, we can go, most of the services are coming out of either Albany or Columbus, and we have an office locally that can represent with DFACS. But if we lose the money and we lose those services, we will have to go further and further to get the help that families need. And as you know, or you may not know, transportation is also a big issue in rural communities as well. So we're looking at the added stress of making sure they're able to get to the services they need. So it is imperative that we get the numbers so that we can keep what we have and hopefully bring in more services because the numbers have increased.
And I think that's right. And, we talked a little bit about some of the challenges and barriers that exist, in Quitman, but other areas as well, some of the myths that exist out there. So I'm curious to hear, I think, Mr. Lewis's connection. We'll see if we can get back with him in a second. But I'm curious from Ms. Crumbs, Ms. Jones, what are some creative and innovative ways that even Fair Count as an organization and a nonprofit organization, and I know we've done some collaboration through internet installations throughout the county, but we want to see what we can do to increase participation. So are there any creative or innovative ways you think that we could collaborate to ensure that we're able to do that in a safe and healthy manner during this time?
Well, I know that the committee has put forth some great effort in trying to get the word out, and kudos to everybody on it. And Mr. Blackman is actually the chair, and I'm vice chair of it. But we probably have to repeat some of those efforts, and then again, like you say, come up with some creative ways to do it. I've said earlier that we need to make the census an annual conversation. Once it's over, we need to talk about, well, because you did the census, you now have blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It needs to be, there needs to be a commitment to service providers, agencies, organizations, community leaders, that when they talk about why we have these services or why we need these services, this is why you're completing the census is important. And it needs to be there just needs to be a message there that goes across the board that says census, 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 and why it's important to that individual agency if necessary. We need to keep it in the forefront. I mean, we hear every day, you turn on your news and it's COVID, COVID, COVID. Well, it needs to be that way with census, census, census. but with all the partners who are involved, I think.
No, I like that. I like what you said there, particularly around keeping this on an annual conversation and not just every 10 years. And that's something that Fair Count that we have looked to do in communities, is not, create this infrastructure. And then when the census is over, proposed to be over now, and at the end of October, that we pack up and leave, right? That infrastructure is there. And we're building communities for not only the census, but other civic engagement initiatives to make sure that it all ties in together and building communities. Ms. Jones, did you have anything to add?
I really don't, because we have brainstormed trying to think of creative ways that we could get the messages out, and it's it's a little bit disheartening that people don't understand the importance of it.
Yeah.
I wish I had some ideas that would make it easier for them to participate and more inclined to participate.
Well,
One of the
part of that
things-
conversation also, you really need to do an education campaign. There needs to be a grassroots campaign to educate people, first and foremost, the census. And we kind of joke, I was kind of joking about it, but we need to go back into the history of it, how it came about for the United States. But we also need to play on some of the interest in our communities as well. And everybody knows, what was the first time you ever heard of the census? Probably growing up. The first time I heard about a census was when Mary was going to have Jesus. Why were they going back to Bethlehem? There you go. There's your faith base right there. So we need to have a education about the census, going all the way back to the first one, and why was it important now. So I don't know how that narrative would look, but those years, those next 9 years after this, we need to have a growing effort to educate our communities about the census and make that part of that annual conversation, and just when it's time to come to do the census, we don't have to run around like chickens with no head. We've done the work already. The legwork has been there, and we can just go ahead and say, all right, here's the census, let's do this.
I like that, and you talk a little bit about, the efforts that sort of are already underway. And one of the things I think Ms. Jones mentioned on this, people are really interested in the door knockers coming around. So I'm curious, do you all think that you'll see a big uptick in numbers when those door knockers start knocking on doors?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I sure do.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's what they expect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So then I guess one of the things that maybe as a committee, and you all can sort of, look at this internally, but maybe the thing would be to reach out to make sure folks know that, we want them to remain safe and healthy too in their interactions. And so, letting them know what to expect in terms of a door knocker, because there are a lot of scammers out there these days, and, things like that. So we don't want people to be taken advantage of, because we've heard of some other cases in counties and cities where people are scamming in that way, but making sure they know that the census employee, the enumerator coming around, will have a badge, what that badge will entail and looks like, kind of how they will be dressed, and the information that they will be, be asking for, and maybe doing a campaign around, that, and letting folks in Quitman know that, beginning August 11th, those door knockers will be hitting the ground in Georgia, to let folks know at their door about, completing the census. And so we're happy to sort of help, help with that as well.
If we can actually get a template of what that badge would look like, I can put it on our Facebook page, like I've been doing the census information, so that people can see it, and we can do some flyers so that this is what that badge is going to look like. This is who should be coming to your door. And if they don't wear this, don't let them in. And maybe we can tie it into do a little CNC campaign, COVID and census campaign, how to be safe, what to do, how to, let them come into your home, that kind of thing.
Yeah, in general, I don't think they should let them come into their home anyway, but, from the door, that type of thing. So we want to make sure.
The front porch.
But we'll definitely make sure we work with you all to provide that type of outreach so that you can promote it in that way. You also mentioned, faith-based, outreach, and that has certainly been tremendous in a lot of our rural areas, but even in the urban areas as well. And, in fact, today starts a weekend of action from our faith team across the entire state, where we're mobilizing churches, places of worship to engage their congregations virtually. If they're doing virtual service, they can still, we've had a lot of faith leaders, pastors, who have incorporated just what you said, Ms. Crumbs, the scriptures from the Bible that relate to the census. And they've been able to turn that into sermons and convey that message to their congregants. And we're also asking churches to, they may not have in-person service right now, but they can change their marquee or their sign out front to say, complete your census, you can call here, or you can go here to do that. So those are kind of creative and innovative ways that we can still engage congregants in this very social distance lifestyle that we're currently in, and make sure that we're staying safe. But we do want to make sure that we continue that type of faith outreach. I want to go to see if Mr. Blackman, I've unmuted you. Did you have anything to add to how you think we could start to reach in a safe way?
Well, we're looking at forming 5 teams to go out into the county and offer the ability to provide a access point for that person to log in and get counted while we're there. Now, my question is there a way to get a list of the folks that have been counted at this point?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and we get that often a lot. In fact, there is no way, and I mentioned at the top of the conversation that, the information that is provided to the Census Bureau is protected by law, so their personal information. So we don't have a way to, take that and equate that to which households have not completed it. The only thing we can do is the census does provide us a map that shows targeted areas within the county down to the level of the census tract information, where we can tell within a tract how many households have not, or how many households need to reach the percentage points. But we cannot, unfortunately, go household by household, family by family to do that. So we can target certain tracts, and some cases, a lot of our rural counties, there's only one tract for the whole county. So it really makes it a little bit difficult to drill down exactly into certain neighborhoods on where we can do that type of outreach.
Well, obviously, if we had that information, it would be a lot easier to determine which household that you needed to go to, and you'd be able to go and say, listen, we know that you haven't registered at this point, and we would like to help you do that. And we have the equipment here with us to get you registered. Otherwise, we physically have to go to every household, and you can't make the statement that you don't know that they haven't registered. So any information that we've got, if it can show designated areas in the county that there hasn't been much response, I mean, obviously you can concentrate in those areas. But we're looking at having 5 teams and having them COVID testing before they go out, and have them with all the protective gear that they require to be safe, and just start physically going door to door. So that's what we're trying to put in place right now.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Blackman, for that. One thing I would say also is that, I mentioned the enumerators of those door knockers. A large, part of what they do have information that suggests which households have not, because they don't go to every household, right? That'll take forever. But they do target which households have not completed it through the self-response mechanisms, calling in on the phone, or mailing in the questionnaire. And we haven't talked much about the mailed-in questionnaire as well. A lot of times we receive that in the mail. We receive the subsequent reminders or postcards. We toss a lot of that to the side, or it gets thrown in the pile with the junk mail. And we want to ensure that folks know what that looks like, and we can help to provide you all, if you don't already have, like what that questionnaire looked like when it came in the mail, what type of envelope it was in, and that type of thing, where folks can know, okay, well, if I get this is legit. I should be completing this, and I should be returning that. So we do want to make sure that there is that ability to still mail in the mailed-in questionnaire. There was also a process called Update and Leave. And this was a process where door knockers were slated to come around and drop a hand-delivered paper questionnaire off at doorsteps, and a lot of that was for rural parts of rural Georgia. And even a lot of households existed in Quitman County where that was slated to happen. And that was slated to happen back in the spring. It got then delayed until June, July. And I think now the Census Bureau has really completed that process where they've dropped it at those set of households in the county that are very remote, that are very rural, and that thing. So I think there's still a lot of, I would say probably we have a lot of those paper questionnaires that exist in households in Quitman County right now that just have not been completed. And so we need to make sure people know the importance about, what it means for the communities. And you guys have you're on the ground there in Quitman County every day. We want to just supplement the work that you're doing to kind of help in that way. And it seems like we've come up with some ideas, and I think that we can definitely do that after this conversation. I'm going to go now sort of to our closing remarks, and we usually close out our virtual bus tour stops in a real fun activity where I just go around and just ask you, what is it that makes Quitman County so special to you? Some of you were born, raised there, you lived there all your life. Mr. Blackman talked about, those that are younger now growing up and whether or not they stay or they leave. But what is it about Quitman County that's so special to you? So I'm going to start with Ms. Jones.
I just love Quitman County. It's probably the prettiest place on earth to me. We have the rivers, we have the rolling hills, we have the creeks, we have the farmland. We just have it all. When we were talking about being sheltered in place, I thought, hey, we're sheltered in vacation land. It couldn't be any better than this. It's a great place to live. Friendly people, small town atmosphere, people that care. It's just a wonderful place to live.
Oh, sounds like when can I sign up to move there?
You wouldn't leave if you came.
Ms. Crumbs, what makes it so special to you?
Well, I've always said I've been, this October will be 17 years with Family Connection here in Quitman County. And the one thing that I say, the greatest asset resource that I could possibly name for Quitman County would be the people themselves. Nothing is perfect, but we have a good group of people that when you call on them, if they can't do everything, they're going to do something. And they have a great participation rate when it comes to something they're passionate about. I just haven't had, I can't say it's been a bad experience. I live across the river in Eufaula, but I'm a Georgia girl, right down in the other direction in Cuthbert, Georgia. So the people are the greatest asset and resource that I have found in Quitman County, because no matter what you need, somebody's going to be able to help you.
Well, that's awesome. I like that. The people definitely make a community, so we definitely agree on that front. Mr. Blackman, what is it about Quitman County that makes it so special to you?
Well, I was born here, but I didn't grow up here. I did come back at a much later age, which is good that we have some percentage of people that have been able to do this. But we're the best kept secret in the state of Georgia, unfortunately. So what the other ladies have said just basically reiterates exactly what we've got here. We've got the opportunity to be one of the most outstanding communities in the state because of our natural resources here. So we have an excellent facility in our school system. We've got room to grow, and just basically that growing would help resolve a lot of the difficulties that we work with today. So it's an opportunity for families to move here if we can figure that out and reverse the trends that we've been experiencing. So we've just got a great place for folks to come to. So we're trying to work on that.
Well, I love it. Thank you so much, Mr. Blackman. Thank you for your service with the Board of Commissioners as well. Mr. Lewis, did you want to unmute yourself and try and see if we have a good connection there?
How is the connection?
We can hear you. We wanted to, I guess I'll give you a second to say, what makes Quitman so special to you, and then we'll see if you have anything to add on the census conversation.
Okay, I appreciate it. I do thank everyone for being on the call today. Um, Georgetown is special to me because this is my hometown. I grew up here. Went to high school in Cuthbert with Sarah Lee. She used to torment me in English, and I tormented her in math. Um, and I've been fortunate enough to live several different places. And I love the city, but I also love our location. My son and I are able to utilize our memberships to the Atlanta Aquarium, the Atlanta Zoo, and Legoland because it's only 2.5 hours away. I can have him over at Tybee Island in 4 hours. We can go down to Panama City in less than 3 hours. We're in the perfect location. I echo what Ms. Joyce has said. We have natural beauty. And having a son, he loves the outside. He would not have been able to play like this in DC if I had stayed there. He would not have been able to play like that in New York. We'd have to go to Central Park. It's just beautiful to be in the countryside, being in rural America. As far as the census goes, I thank everyone for their input. I think our game plan of having teams go door to door going to be perfect. I'm here at the funeral home now, and I'm looking out my window, and I'm looking at a house of at least 6 Indians that were not in the census 10 years ago. So I see 6 new folk. I'm looking at another house across the 82 to 27, and the young lady has 2 children. Last time we had the census, she was probably in middle school. So I'm looking at how we're going to pick up folks if we can just get out there and get them counted. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lewis. Thank you for joining the conversation. And I think you're absolutely right about making sure folks that are newly moved into communities certainly are being counted throughout the process. I want to thank everybody on today's call for joining. I think we've come up with some ideas. It looks like you all are working on some other ideas as well, and so I think we'll be able to continue to collaborate in a way that we get those numbers in Quitman County up, so that you all can get the resources that you so much need and deserve. So with that, I want to close out with several reminders for folks that, there are 3 ways that you can complete the census questionnaire. You can do it at my2020census.gov, which is online. You can call in and do it over the phone at 1-844-330-2020. Again, 1-844-330-2020. Or you can go through that junk mail tab, fill out that paper questionnaire, and send that back in. You can also keep, updated with what we're doing at FairCount as it relates to, updates that we continue to send out at faircount.org. And, you can check in with us there. So with that, thank you so much to our special guests, Mr. Lewis, Mr. Blagman, Ms. Crumbs, Ms. Jones, all the great folks there on the ground in County. Thanks to our lead organizer at FairCount, Mr. Kevin Brown, for all that he's been doing to help organize this event and our team there on the ground to make sure that we're doing our part to ensure that communities are counted. So with that, everyone have a safe, healthy, and I hope happy weekend. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.